What if everything we believed about global economic leadership wasn't just outdated but completely backwards? For years, we've been told that the United States holds the crown as the world's dominant economy, with China trailing closely behind. Yet recent events tell a different story. The U.S. China tariff war, once hailed as a strategic move by Washington to contain Beijing, has entered its third round of compromise, and in each time, it's Washington retreating. The latest 90-day postponement of additional tariffs marks another pivotal moment. For the third time, high-level talks between American and Chinese leadership ended with the U.S. stepping back. But why does this keep happening? Is it a sign that China's economic strength has surpassed what the West is willing to publicly admit? This video pulls back the curtain, revealing data, industrial capability, and strategic miscalculations that suggest the global economic order has already shifted. Could it be that China, not the U.S., is in fact the world's largest economy? What happens when world leaders cling to outdated assumptions? Most importantly, how does this reshape the geopolitical chessboard? We're diving deep into the current state of U.S. China trade relations, GDP illusions, strategic missteps, and the growing industrial might that's being ignored at our own peril. Watch until the end, because once you see the full picture, you may never look at global power the same way again. And now I want to hear from you. Do you believe the U.S. is still the world's leading economy? Yes or no? Drop your take in the comments below. This is a conversation that matters. The U.S. China tariff war has just been paused again, this time for 90 days. It's not the first, nor even the second time such a compromise has occurred. It's the third under the Trump administration. In tandem with this delay, American and Chinese leaders conducted their third top-level phone call this year, marking a stark change in tone. After nearly 8 years of erratic bilateral relations, for the first time in almost a decade, there's a faint hint of certainty returning to a previously volatile relationship. What this latest compromise reveals is much more than diplomacy, it's recognition. The U.S. is beginning to reassess its policy stance, not only in trade but also in defense and broader strategic areas. And that reassessment is being driven by one unavoidable realization. China is not the world's second-largest economy, it's the first. This shift in perception, slow and awkward as it may be, is ultimately beneficial for everyone. Cooperation must begin from a realistic understanding of power. And Washington finally seems to be inching toward that reality. Let's rewind the story. The first major compromise happened in Geneva, where punitive tariffs escalated to 145% on both sides. It reached a devastating tipping point. American store shelves were emptying. Shortages of essential industrial components, like Chinese-made tools and mechanical parts, began to paralyze. U.S. manufacturing, the economy was on the verge of seizing up. The second compromise came shortly after China halted rare earth exports. In response, the U.S. lifted restrictions on jet engine exports to Chinese students and eased sanctions on semiconductor design software. Even though rare earth supplies gradually resumed, the implicit threat remains a sword of Damocles hanging over U.S. defense manufacturing to this very moment. Now, with this third delay, the pattern is undeniable. Each round ends with the U.S. folding, not out of weakness, but out of recognition. Here's a crucial point that often goes unsaid. If you look at how Trump's administration handled trade talks with Europe, Japan, and South Korea, it's clear he chose softer targets. He pushed hard, and they yielded. But when it comes to China, the calculus changes dramatically. China isn't a soft target, on Trump knows it. That's the real reason behind his repeated concessions. Here at Epic Report, we've long said China is not the world's second-largest economy. Despite repeated framing in Western media and institutions, the truth is that the United States is no longer number one, at least not in the ways that matter most. Let's talk numbers. On the surface, GDP rankings suggest the U.S. towers above China. But look again. Whether it's nominal GDP or purchasing power parity PPP, China's economy has already exceeded that of the U.S. by a reported 23% under PPP metrics. And even that number is a staggering understatement. Why? Because GDP statistics are not standardized. Countries use vastly different methodologies. European nations, for example, began including illegal yet voluntary economic activities in their GDP calculations starting in 2014, things like drug trafficking, prostitution, and smuggling. America takes it even further. Sky-high medical costs are fully baked into GDP. U.S. healthcare spending amounts to $4.9 trillion, making up 17.6% of national GDP. That's roughly $14,570 per person. Add in finance, insurance, and real estate, collectively known as the fire sector, and the distortion becomes even more exaggerated. The fire sector's contribution to GDP is double that of manufacturing. But let's be honest, none of that creates real economic value. It's statistical inflation pumped up by administrative and speculative sectors rather than productive output. And it leads to dangerously false assumptions. Take the Russia-Ukraine war as a cautionary tale of strategic misjudgment. Western leaders, including U.S. officials, openly mocked Russia's economy as a glorified gas station. They claimed it was as small as Italy's and would collapse under sanctions. Biden himself predicted the ruble would be worthless, that Russia's economy would shrink 50% and vanish from the top 20. But things didn't go that way. The ruble didn't collapse. Russia didn't fall out of the economic rankings. In fact, it's the EU whose economy has taken the brunt of energy shortages and inflationary pressure. Strategic misjudgment based on flawed GDP metrics led the West into a drawn-out conflict with no decisive win in sight. The same flawed logic is present in the U.S. China trade war. Misunderstanding the true scale of China's economic and industrial capacity sets the stage for decisions that backfire. Let's dig into the real scope of China's economy. Economist Dr. Rafael Guzman from Santiago University in Chile analyzed World Bank's ICP data, according to official PPP metrics. China's economy is 1.3 times the size of the U.S., but industrial output tells a different story. China manufactures at a scale that's beyond comparison. Robotic installations per capita are higher than the U.S. and Europe combined. China alone consumes over half the world's concrete. Annually, it produces 54% of global steel, 59% of aluminum, 51% of concrete, and 63% of chemical products. To put it in perspective, China's monthly steel and aluminum output exceeds the US's annual production. And these figures exist despite China's recent efforts to scale back capacity for environmental reasons. So ask yourself, what happens if China removes those constraints in a wartime scenario? World Bank data claims China's per capita GDP is approximately $21,000 under nominal terms or $23,000 by PPP, just slightly ahead of Mexico. That simply doesn't hold up against reality. Let's examine the costs. Chinese citizens consume 3,400 calories daily versus Mexico's 3,200. But the cost per calorie in China is just $0.24 compared to Mexico's $0.68. That would imply Mexican food is 3 times higher quality, an unrealistic proposition. Chinese consumers purchase more vehicles per 1,000 people than Mexicans. Yet their average listed car price is half $12,000 versus $26,000. And that's despite Mexicans often buying second-hand imports from the U.S. Housing follows the same trend. China's average home is larger, 36.5 square meters versus Mexico's 22.6, yet cheaper per square meter. Even electricity and education stats are skewed to favor the West. Does anyone truly believe Mexico's university system is 4 times better than China's? Western institutions systematically lowball China's data, intentionally. It maintains the narrative that the U.S. remains the global economic leader, because once that illusion crumbles, so does the justification for the U.S. dollar's reserve currency status. If you're still watching, you're clearly here for deep insight, not surface-level headlines. Make sure to click follow and turn on the bell so you won't miss the truth beneath the noise. Every week, Epoch Report brings you the shifts that shape markets and expose the myths that power policy. You'll want to be first to spot the change, not last to react. By reformulating GDP based on actual consumption and industrial output, China's true per capita GDP likely sits around $35,000 to $40,000. That implies a total GDP between $49 and $56 trillion, roughly 1.8 times the U.S. figure. Look at manufacturing. China accounts for 39% of global manufacturing output. The U.S., just 9%. China's industrial consumption and production dominate every major material: steel, concrete, automotive, smartphones. No matter how you run the numbers, by volume, by productivity, or by infrastructure, China comes out on top. True strength in today's world stems from industrialization, and history has proven, once a nation completes the arc of industrialization, it sets the stage for an explosion in technological advancement. Need proof? Consider China's pandemic response. In early 2020, when the world faced a dire shortage of protective masks, China's manufacturing sector pivoted at lightning speed. Car companies, steel producers, and textile mills all converted lines for mask production. Within 3 months, daily output ballooned from 20 million to over 1.1 billion. Along the way, Chinese firms solved upstream issues, designing and mass-producing their own high-spec melt-blown fabric machinery and raw materials. Not only did China meet domestic demand, but in April 2020 alone, it exported 1.06 billion masks in a single day. That's the power of a complete industrial chain. That's not just scale, it's wartime production capacity in peacetime. Now picture the same model applied to military equipment. Post-Ukraine, the global defense industry realized the strategic value of drones and anti-drone systems. Many of the cutting-edge weapons unveiled in China's September 3rd military parade were conceived and prototyped after realizing those lessons. From R&D to deployment, completed in under 2 years. China's full-spectrum industrial infrastructure enables that kind of turnaround. Now, this is not a war machine built on borrowed time or imported parts. It's self-reliant, fast, and adaptable. Trump is beginning to see the writing on the wall. Competing with China on raw power is a losing hand. America needs to step back, refocus internally, and reassess its position based on reality and not legacy. Across sector after sector, China's development curves are overtaking America's. Sometimes gradually, sometimes in explosive leaps. But it's happening. And the pace is so fast, even many in China haven't yet grasped the full scale of it. So here's the bottom line. Anyone still thinking of China as the subordinate player in a U.S. dominated world order is not just wrong, they're making fatal strategic errors. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Is China already the world's largest economy, and, if so, can the rest of the world catch up? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. If you found value in what we uncovered today, don't stop here. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Timing matters in geopolitics, and in just 10 minutes a day, with Epic Report, we'll stay ahead of the tides that reshape our world.